What's good, ChronoCrew Legends? We're back with part 4 of What If Deku Had Gilgamesh's powers, and trust me, this one's going to shake the entire timeline. We've got the Provisional Hero License Exam, the Overhaul War, the Rescue of Eri, and a school festival with royal flair. You guys have been showing crazy love on every part, and I appreciate every single one of you for sticking with me. Let's smash 100 likes to unlock the next chapter. If you're new here, subscribe, ring that bell, and join the ChronoCrew Legends for more anime reimaginings. Let's dive into this golden storm. The aftermath of the Kamino Ward incident sent shockwaves through hero society. All Might's battle with All for One had been broadcast live across the nation, revealing not only the existence of Japan's greatest villain, but also the limits of the symbol of peace. Though All Might had publicly claimed victory, those who had witnessed the final moments, including Izuku, knew the truth was more complex. 3 days after the rescue operation, Class 1 gathered at UA's main campus, now surrounded by newly constructed walls and enhanced security measures. The atmosphere was tense as they assembled in their classroom, awaiting Aizawa's arrival. "I still can't believe we pulled it off," Kirishima whispered, glancing at Bakugo, who sat with his typical scowl, though perhaps less pronounced than usual. "It wasn't without consequences," Todoroki replied quietly. "The principal nearly expelled us." Izuku, seated regally at his desk, appeared unconcerned with such trivialities. His crimson eyes were focused on the window, where construction crews continued reinforcing UA's defenses. "Walls," he commented with mild disdain, as if stone and steel could keep out what truly threatens this institution. Momo, seated behind him, leaned forward slightly. "The security measures are more symbolic than practical. They're meant to reassure parents and the public. Symbols without substance are merely illusions," Izuku replied. "This society has relied on All Might's smile for too long. Now they build walls to replace what they've lost." The classroom door slid open, and Aizawa entered, his perpetually tired expression even more pronounced than usual. The class immediately fell silent. "I won't waste time on pleasantries," Aizawa began, his voice flat. "The events at Kamino Ward have accelerated certain aspects of your hero education. Effective immediately, UA is implementing a dormitory system. You will all live on campus for the remainder of your education." Murmurs spread through the classroom, some excited, others concerned. Additionally, Aizawa continued, "Your Provisional Hero License Exam has been moved forward. In 2 weeks, you will be tested alongside students from other hero schools to determine if you're worthy of limited hero authorization." His gaze swept across the room, lingering momentarily on Izuku, Todoroki, Kirishima, and Momo. "Some of you have already acted as if you had such authorization. Now you'll have the opportunity to earn it properly." "Sensei," Ida raised his hand, ever the dutiful class representative. "What about the students whose actions during the rescue operation violated school regulations and hero laws?" Aizawa's expression darkened slightly. The faculty deliberated extensively. Given the exceptional circumstances and the successful outcome, no permanent punishments were assigned. However, his eyes narrowed. "Any future unauthorized activities will result in immediate expulsion. Is that clear?" The question was directed at the entire class, but everyone knew it was primarily meant for Izuku, who had orchestrated the operation. "Crystal," Izuku replied with a slight smile that suggested he found the warning amusing rather than intimidating. After outlining the dormitory arrangements and distributing information about the upcoming license exam, Aizawa dismissed the class for the day. As students gathered their belongings, preparing to return home to pack for the move to the dorms, Aizawa called out one final instruction: "Midoriya," a word. While the others filed out, Izuku remained seated, his posture relaxed yet somehow imperious, as if he were granting an audience rather than being summoned. When they were alone, Aizawa approached Izuku's desk, his expression unreadable. "The principal wanted to expel you, yet here I remain," Izuku observed. "Because All Might intervened," Aizawa revealed. "He argued that your actions, while reckless and illegal, demonstrated exceptional leadership and tactical thinking, qualities essential for top heroes. The symbol of peace recognizes value when he sees it," Izuku replied. "Even as his own power wanes." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean by that?" "You're not a fool, Aizawa-sensei," Izuku said, rising from his seat with fluid grace. "You've observed the same changes I have. All Might's muscle form is maintained for shorter periods. His public appearances have decreased. The battle with All for One took more from him than he admits. For a long moment, Aizawa was silent, his expression revealing nothing. Finally, he sighed. Your observation skills remain impressive, Midoriya. But be careful how freely you share such insights. The stability of hero society currently hinges on maintaining certain illusions. A house built on sand will inevitably collapse, Izuku replied, gathering his bag. The question is not if, but when, and what rises in its place. Just focus on earning your provisional license, Aizawa advised, his tone suggesting the conversation was over. The future of hero society is not your concern right now. Izuku smiled, a cold, knowing expression that made even the stoic Aizawa uncomfortable. Everything is my concern, sensei. By divine right, the move to Heights Alliance, UA's newly constructed dormitory complex, proceeded smoothly. Each class had their own building, with individual rooms designed to accommodate students' specific needs and quirks. The shared common areas were spacious and well-appointed, creating an environment that balanced privacy with community. On their first evening in the dorms, Class 1A gathered in the common room for an informal housewarming. Ashido had suggested they take turns showing off their rooms, turning the occasion into a contest of sorts. I'm not participating in such foolishness, Bakugo declared, though he remained in the common area, watching with feigned disinterest. Afraid you'll lose, Explosion Boy? Kaminari teased, earning a threatening glare. When Izuku's turn came, there was notable curiosity among his classmates. The King of Heroes had been characteristically tight-lipped about his room arrangements, declining even Ida's official dormitory inspection earlier that day. I suppose I can permit a brief viewing of my chambers, Izuku conceded with regal condescension, though I doubt your common sensibilities will appreciate its true value. He led the group to his room on the 4th floor, opening the door with a casual gesture. What lay beyond left even the most vocal students momentarily speechless. The room had been completely transformed. The standard dormitory furnishings had been replaced with ornate pieces that appeared to be solid gold. A canopied bed with crimson silk sheets, a desk inlaid with precious stones, shelves lined with ancient texts and artifacts. The walls were covered in tapestries depicting epic battles and celestial events, while the ceiling had somehow been altered to resemble the night sky, complete with slowly moving constellations. How is this even allowed? Ida finally sputtered, his hands making chopping motions of extreme distress. This violates at least 17 dormitory regulations. I received special dispensation, Izuku replied smoothly. The walls, floor, and ceiling remain structurally unaltered. Everything else is merely decoration. Decoration? Uraraka exclaimed, her eyes wide as she stared at what appeared to be an actual golden fountain in one corner. This looks like a museum exhibit, or a Tomb Raider's wet dream, Kaminari added, earning a sharp elbow from Jairu. Momo, who had remained quiet during the initial shock, approached one of the tapestries with genuine interest. This depicts the Epic of Gilgamesh, she observed, and this one shows the construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You recognize them, Izuku noted with mild approval. Few in this era would. My education included extensive classical literature and art history, she replied, studying the intricate details of the weaving. Though I've never seen reproductions of this quality. They almost seem original. They are, Izuku confirmed casually, causing Momo's eyes to widen in surprise. But that would make them thousands of years old. They should be in a museum under climate control, not hanging in a dormitory. They are precisely where they belong, Izuku stated with finality, in the possession of their rightful owner. After the room viewing contest concluded, with Izuku being disqualified for excessive and potentially illegal modifications, according to Ida, the class settled in the common room for dinner. Sada had prepared a feast to celebrate their first night together, and conversation flowed easily as they discussed the upcoming provisional license exam. I heard Shiketsu High will be participating, Ojiro mentioned between bites. They're supposed to be as prestigious as UA. More like second-rate pretenders, Bakugo scoffed. We'll crush them. Arrogance before achievement is the hallmark of mediocrity, Izuku commented, sipping from a golden goblet he'd brought from his room. Though in this instance, your assessment is not entirely incorrect. Bakugo bristled at the backhanded agreement. I don't need your approval, Goldie. Regardless, Ida interjected, attempting to prevent an argument. We should prepare diligently. The provisional license exam has a notoriously low pass rate, less than 50% typically qualify. What exactly does a provisional license allow? So you asked, her large eyes blinking thoughtfully. Limited hero activities, Momo explained. We be authorized to use our quirks publicly and engage in hero work during emergencies, though still under supervision in most cases. More importantly, Todoroki added quietly, it's the first step toward professional status. No hero agency will consider interns who haven't at least obtained provisional certification. As the conversation continued, Izuku found himself observing his classmates with something approaching interest. They had grown since the first day at UA, not merely in the application of their quirks, but in their understanding of the world they sought to protect. The Kamino incident had forced them to confront realities that most hero students didn't face until much later in their careers. Later that evening, as most students retired to their rooms, Izuku found himself on the dormitory roof gazing at the stars. The night was clear, the constellations vivid against the darkness, a view he had always appreciated despite the changes in their arrangement over the millennia. He sensed rather than heard Momo's approach, her footsteps nearly silent on the rooftop access stairs. This is becoming a habit, he observed without turning. You seeking me out under the stars. Perhaps because it's the only time you seem contemplative rather than merely judgmental, she replied, moving to stand beside him. May I join you? He gestured permission with a slight inclination of his head. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, both gazing upward at the celestial tapestry above. You're worried about the license exam, Momo finally said. Not a question, but an observation. I do not worry, Izuku corrected her. I anticipate. There is a difference. And what do you anticipate? Izuku's crimson eyes reflected the starlight as he considered her question. Complication. The public revelation of All Might's battle with All for One has altered the landscape of hero society. The provisional license exam will reflect this new reality. You think it will be more difficult than in previous years? Momo asked. I think it will be more political, Izuku replied. The Hero Commission fears a power vacuum in All Might's absence. They will use the exam to identify and accelerate potential replacements. Momo absorbed this insight with thoughtful silence. And you? Do you aspire to fill that vacuum? The question drew a rare, genuine laugh from Izuku, brief but unexpectedly warm. I have no interest in being a replacement, Yaoyorozu. A king does not succeed. He reigns by divine right. Even kings must be crowned, she pointed out. In this society, the crown is a hero license. A technicality, Izuku dismissed, though without his usual harshness. But one I will accommodate. For now. Their conversation drifted to more immediate concerns. Training regimens for the upcoming exam, speculation about the test format, assessments of their classmates' readiness. Throughout, Momo was struck by the subtle difference in Izuku's manner when they were alone. The imperious condescension remained, but it was tempered with something almost like respect, as if she alone among their peers was worthy of genuine discourse. As they prepared to return to their rooms, Momo hesitated, then asked the question that had been lingering in her mind since the Kamino incident. During the battle with All for One, you chose to protect the building structure rather than focus solely on defeating him. Why? Izuku studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the darkness. A curious inquiry. Does it surprise you that I would prioritize civilian safety? Honestly, yes, Momo admitted. The Izuku Midoriya I met on the first day of school would have considered defeating a worthy opponent more important than structural concerns. Perhaps, Izuku acknowledged. Or perhaps you simply didn't know me as well as you thought. Before she could respond, he turned toward the stairs. Rest well, Yaoyorozu. The path ahead requires clarity of mind and purpose. As he disappeared into the stairwell, Momo remained on the roof, puzzling over the enigma that was Izuku Midoriya, the king of heroes whose actions increasingly contradicted his cold rhetoric. The 2 weeks before the provisional license exam passed in a blur of intense training. Class 1A worked to develop new techniques and strategies, aware that the test would likely push them beyond anything they'd experienced in regular classes. For Izuku, this period was an opportunity to refine his already formidable abilities. While his classmates focused on raw power or new applications of their quirks, he concentrated on efficiency and precision, the ability to deploy exactly the right treasure at exactly the right moment with minimal energy expenditure. On the morning of the exam, Class 1A gathered outside the dormitory where a bus waited to transport them to the testing facility. Aizawa stood before them, his expression as impassive as ever. Today will determine whether you're worthy of the limited authority a provisional license represents, he stated bluntly. Remember that you're not just representing yourselves, but UA as an institution. Recent events have placed our school under intense scrutiny. His gaze swept across the assembled students, lingering briefly on Izuku. Some of you have already demonstrated exceptional combat capabilities. Others excel in rescue operations or strategic thinking. But a true hero must be proficient in all aspects of the profession. As they boarded the bus, Izuku noted the nervous energy emanating from many of his classmates. Even Bakugo, typically brimming with aggressive confidence, seemed uncharacteristically focused. The gravity of the examination and what it represented for their futures weighed on them all except Izuku himself, of course. The King of Heroes sat with regal posture near the rear of the bus, his crimson eyes gazing out the window with serene confidence. Not merely confidence, certainty. For what challenge could possibly threaten one who possessed the world's original treasures? Upon arriving at the National Dagoba Arena, a massive facility specifically designed for hero qualification exams, Class 1A was directed to a changing room where they could don their hero costumes. Izuku's golden armor materialized directly from his treasury, saving him the inconvenience of conventional changing methods. Show off, Bakugo muttered as he adjusted his gauntlets. Efficiency, Izuku corrected him. A concept you might consider adopting. Before Bakugo could retort, an announcement echoed through the facility, directing all examinees to the orientation hall. As they made their way through the complex, they encountered students from other hero programs, Shiketsu High in their distinctive black uniforms, Ketsubutsu Academy with their more diverse costume designs, and several smaller schools, each trying to project confidence. In the orientation hall, the atmosphere was electric with competitive tension. Students sized each other up, noting potential threats and allies with professional assessment. Izuku, unsurprisingly, drew numerous stares, his golden armor and regal bearing making him impossible to ignore. "That's him," a Ketsubutsu student whispered loudly. "The one from the Kamino incident. They say he fought all for one directly. I heard he has some kind of pocket dimension filled with weapons," another added. "Like that creation girl from UA, but with ancient artifacts instead." Izuku ignored the whispers, his attention focused on more significant observations. A tall Shiketsu student with wild black hair and an intense gaze. A girl from the same school whose costume seemed designed for wind manipulation. A relaxed-looking boy with purple hair who appeared bored but whose eyes missed nothing. Potential threats? Momo asked quietly, noting the direction of Izuku's gaze. Potential annoyances, he corrected. There are perhaps 3 individuals here worthy of genuine concern. Before he could elaborate, the orientation began. A pro-hero named Mera, whose appearance suggested severe sleep deprivation, explained the first phase of the exam. In today's society, responding to large-scale disasters has become a routine part of hero work, Mera stated, stifling a yawn. The first test will evaluate your rescue capabilities in a crisis situation. He gestured to a large screen behind him, which displayed a diagram of the facility. The arena has been divided into disaster zones, earthquake, flood, fire, landslide, and urban collapse. When the test begins, you will enter these zones where you'll find victims, played by professional crisis actors. Your objective is to rescue these victims safely while dealing with the ongoing disaster conditions. Each victim carries markers that they will give to rescuers who successfully save them. You need to collect at least 2 markers to proceed to the second phase. He paused, his exhausted expression momentarily sharpening. However, out of the 300 examinees present today, only 100 will advance. This means 2/3 of you will fail the first test alone. Murmurs spread through the hall as the implications sank in. With such a high failure rate, merely performing adequately wouldn't be enough. They would need to outperform the majority of their peers. One final note, Mera added. In real disaster situations, heroes rarely work in isolation. Cooperation, even between heroes from different agencies, is essential. Keep that in mind as you proceed. As the examinees were directed to their starting positions around the arena perimeter, Ida attempted to organize Class 1A into strategic teams. "We should divide into rescue groups based on quirk compatibility," he suggested, his hands making his characteristic chopping motions. "Midoriya, your mobility with the Vimana could." "I will operate independently," Izuku interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "My methods are not compatible with your conventional rescue approaches." "But the examiner specifically mentioned cooperation," Uraraka pointed out. "He mentioned it as a possibility, not a requirement," Izuku corrected. "And I will cooperate when it serves the objective. But I will not be constrained by your limitations." Before further discussion could occur, a siren blared across the facility indicating the start of the exam. Massive gates in the arena wall slid open, revealing the disaster zones beyond, complete with realistic effects including actual fires, flooding, and structural damage. Without waiting for his classmates, Izuku summoned the Vimana, the golden vessel materializing from a portal above him. As he boarded with fluid grace, he noted the expressions of shock and envy from students of other schools, a reaction he found both appropriate and irrelevant. "Show off," Bakugo muttered again, before blasting himself toward the urban collapse zone with explosive propulsion. From his elevated position aboard the Vimana, Izuku surveyed the arena with calculated precision. His clairvoyance, Sha-Nakba Imuru, activated, revealing patterns in the disaster zones that would be invisible to ordinary perception. He could see the strategic placement of victims, the timing of environmental hazards, even the movements of other examinees as they rushed into the scenarios. "Predictable," he murmured, directing the Vimana toward the earthquake zone. They've designed this test to reward conventional heroics and photogenic rescue techniques. As he approached his chosen area, he observed the chaos below. Buildings continuing to collapse in programmed sequences, debris falling in carefully choreographed patterns, victims trapped in various predicaments ranging from simple extraction to complex medical emergencies. Other examinees had already begun rescue operations, some working individually, others forming impromptu teams. A Shiketsu student was using wind manipulation to clear dust from the air, improving visibility. A group from Ketsubutsu had created a medical triage area, coordinating victim extraction and treatment. Izuku's approach was characteristically unique. Rather than engaging directly in the extraction of victims, he opened multiple portals above the disaster zone. From within emerged not weapons, but artifacts designed for environmental control. A fan that could disperse smoke and dust with a single wave, a crystalline device that stabilized trembling earth, a golden net that captured falling debris before it could cause further damage. With the environmental hazards neutralized in his immediate area, Izuku descended from the Vimana, approaching the first victim. A professional actor convincingly portraying a man with a crushed leg trapped under fallen masonry. "Fear not, citizen," Izuku declared, his voice carrying the natural authority of royalty. "Your king has arrived to ensure your salvation." The actor, momentarily taken aback by this unconventional hero persona, quickly recovered his professional demeanor. "Please help me. My leg. I can't feel my leg." Izuku assessed the situation with a glance. The rubble was designed to appear heavy while actually being lightweight foam, a safety precaution for the exam. Still, proper rescue technique would require stabilizing the victim before extraction. With casual elegance, Izuku opened a small portal beside him. From within emerged a golden staff adorned with intertwined serpents, a caduceus of divine origin. He touched it lightly to the ground near the victim, and a soft golden glow enveloped the trapped man. What are you doing?" the actor asked, genuinely curious about this unusual approach. "Stabilizing your condition and alleviating pain," Izuku explained. "The actual extraction will follow." Another portal opened, this one producing what appeared to be a silken blanket of unusual luster. Izuku slid it under the debris with precise movements. "This is the shroud of perfect extraction," he informed the increasingly bewildered actor. "It will conform to your body and provide complete support during removal." With the preparatory measures complete, Izuku finally addressed the debris itself. Rather than struggling to lift it conventionally, he simply opened another portal directly above it. The rubble disappeared into the Gate of Babylon, leaving the victim free but still lying on the golden shroud. "Your rescue is complete," Izuku stated, helping the man to stand using the shroud as support. "You may now present your marker as tribute for this service." The actor, thoroughly impressed despite himself, handed over one of the marker badges that indicated a successful rescue. That was unlike any rescue technique I've seen before. "Naturally," Izuku replied with imperial confidence. "Common methods are for common heroes." Over the next hour, Izuku continued this approach throughout the earthquake zone, systematically neutralizing environmental hazards before executing precisely orchestrated rescues. His methods were unorthodox but undeniably effective. Each victim was extracted safely, their simulated medical conditions stabilized, and their markers collected with ruthless efficiency. By the time he had acquired well beyond the required minimum of markers, Izuku had drawn an audience of both examinees and examiners, curious about his distinctive rescue style. While lacking the emotional warmth typical of popular heroes, his technical proficiency was beyond reproach. As he was completing his final rescue in the zone, a disturbance caught his attention. In the adjacent fire zone, something had gone wrong. Not a planned part of the examination, but an actual malfunction. The controlled flames had broken their containment, spreading to areas where examinees were working. Without hesitation, Izuku directed the Vimana toward the escalating crisis. As he approached, he could see several students trapped by the advancing flames, including some from UA, Uraraka, and Tsuyu among them. Opening multiple portals simultaneously, Izuku deployed a constellation of artifacts designed for fire suppression. Vessels containing water from mythical rivers, fabrics woven with salamander hide that consumed flames without burning, and finally, a golden scepter that commanded the element itself. The fires receded with unnatural speed, creating safe extraction paths for the trapped examinees. As Uraraka and Tsuyu emerged from the danger zone, they looked up to see Izuku hovering above on his golden vessel. Midoriya-kun, Uraraka called, her face smudged with soot but her expression grateful. That was amazing. Izuku merely nodded in acknowledgement, already turning the Vimana to survey the remainder of the arena. His intervention had not gone unnoticed by the examiners, whose expressions ranged from impressed to concerned at this display of power from a mere candidate. As the first phase of the exam concluded, an announcement echoed across the facility. All examinees, please return to the central plaza. The first phase is now complete. Results will be announced momentarily. The central plaza filled with exhausted but hopeful candidates, many comparing the number of markers they'd collected. Izuku rejoined his classmates, the Vimana dissolving back into his treasury as he descended. How many did you get, Deku? Uraraka asked, using the nickname that had somehow transformed from an insult to a familiar address. Sufficient, he replied, displaying a handful of markers far exceeding the minimum requirement. Before further conversation could occur, Mera appeared on a raised platform, looking even more exhausted than before. Attention, examinees. The results of the first phase have been tallied. He gestured to a large screen which displayed a list of names, the successful candidates who would advance to the second phase. Relief and disappointment spread through the crowd in equal measure as students located their names or found them absent. Every member of Class 1A had passed, though some by narrower margins than others. Izuku noted with mild interest that the Shiketsu students he had identified earlier had also advanced, as had the purple-haired boy who had seemed so disinterested during orientation. The 100 successful candidates will now proceed to the second phase, Mera announced. Please proceed to Arena B for further instructions. As they moved toward the indicated area, Bakugo fell into step beside Izuku, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Your rescue technique was efficient. Coming from Bakugo, this was practically effusive praise. Izuku raised an eyebrow slightly. Your own performance was adequate. Save the backhanded compliments, Bakugo growled. I'm just saying you actually looked like a hero back there, not just a walking arsenal. Before Izuku could respond, they arrived at Arena B, a large, open field surrounded by observation decks. Mera stood at its center, waiting for the successful candidates to gather. The second phase of the provisional license exam, he began once everyone had assembled, will test a different but equally crucial aspect of hero work, combat. He held up what appeared to be a small ball. Each of you will receive 3 of these. They are targets that you will attach to your body. 1 on each shoulder and 1 on your chest or back, your choice. Assistants began distributing the targets to the candidates as Mera continued. Your objective is simple. Eliminate other examinees by hitting their targets with your quirk. If all 3 of your targets are hit, you're out. The last 42 standing will receive their provisional licenses. Murmurs spread through the group at this announcement. The second phase would eliminate more than half of the remaining candidates, making it even more competitive than the first. One additional note, Mera added. Unlike the rescue phase, where cooperation was encouraged, this is fundamentally a competition. Form alliances if you wish, but remember, only 42 will pass. As the targets were distributed and attached, Izuku considered his strategic options. The most efficient approach would be to eliminate as many competitors as possible immediately, before alliances could form. Yet there was also value in observing how others fought, identifying potential threats for future encounters. Begin! Mera's voice rang out, followed immediately by the sound of quirks activating across the arena. The battlefield erupted into chaos as students scattered, some seeking cover, others forming instant alliances, the most confident launching immediate attacks. A Ketsubutsu student fired hardened projectiles in a widespread, hoping to hit multiple targets at once. A girl from Shiketsu created illusions to confuse nearby opponents. Bakugo, predictably, blasted directly toward the nearest competitors, explosive sweat igniting with characteristic aggression. Izuku, in contrast, remained perfectly still as golden portals opened around him in a defensive sphere. From within each emerged the tip of a different weapon, poised to counter any approach from any direction. A fortress strategy? Todoroki commented as he passed, ice forming along one side of his body while flames flickered on the other. Unexpected from you. Observation before action, Izuku replied. Let the mongrels thin each other's numbers first. The battlefield quickly developed distinct patterns. The strongest individual competitors established territories, eliminating anyone who approached. Strategic alliances formed based on school affiliation or quirk compatibility. The weaker or more specialized candidates sought cover, waiting for opportunities to ambush distracted opponents. After several minutes of observation, Izuku finally moved. The Vimana materialized beneath him, lifting him above the battlefield for a comprehensive view. What he saw confirmed his initial assessment. Most competitors were focusing on immediate threats rather than strategic elimination. Inefficient, he murmured, opening multiple portals above the arena. From within each emerged not lethal weapons, but specialized projectiles designed for precision targeting, blunted arrows, weighted nets, bolus with perfect balance. With calculated precision, Izuku began eliminating competitors systematically, prioritizing those who posed the greatest potential threat. His attacks came from multiple angles simultaneously, making conventional defense nearly impossible. Within minutes, he had eliminated a dozen candidates, including several who had seemed particularly capable during the rescue phase. The remaining competitors quickly recognized the threat from above. Several with ranged quirks attempted to target the Vimana only to find their attacks intercepted by shields emerging from defensive portals. Is this all the challenge that Japan's future heroes can muster? Izuku called down, his voice carrying an imperious edge that infuriated those below. Perhaps I should handicap myself to make this sporting. The taunt had its intended effect. Multiple candidates redirected their efforts toward Izuku, forming temporary alliances against the common threat. Precisely as he had planned, their divided attention making them vulnerable to each other even as they focused on him. As the battle continued, the number of active competitors dwindled steadily. 30 minutes into the exam, fewer than 60 remained. Among them were most of Class 1A, the core Shiketsu students, and a handful of particularly resilient candidates from smaller schools. Izuku had just eliminated a Ketsubutsu student with a particularly troublesome hardening quirk when he sensed something approaching from his blind spot, a presence moving with unusual speed and purpose. He turned the Vimana sharply, opening a defensive portal just as a powerful wind blast struck. The attack was partially deflected, but its force was sufficient to rock the golden vessel. Izuku stabilized his position, crimson eyes narrowing as he identified his attacker, the wind-manipulating girl from Shiketsu, now hovering nearby on her own air currents. Impressive evasion, she called, her voice carrying a strange, almost playful edge. I've been watching you, Golden King. Your defenses are formidable. Your assessment is accurate but irrelevant, Izuku replied, studying her with mild interest. Few can approach the Vimana without permission. You have some skill, mongrel. Mongrel! Her expression shifted, something unnatural briefly flickering across her features. Such an interesting choice of words. I wonder if you truly know what you are. Before Izuku could respond, she launched another attack. This one a concentrated tornado that twisted toward him with unnatural precision. He countered with a golden shield emerging from a portal directly in the tornado's path, disrupting its formation. What followed was an aerial battle of unusual intensity. The wind user Izuku recalled her name was Shiketsu's Kami Utsushimi, demonstrated abilities that seemed beyond normal wind manipulation. Her attacks came from multiple angles simultaneously, requiring Izuku to deploy increasingly complex defensive patterns. You're holding back, she observed during a momentary lull, her expression containing a knowing edge that Izuku found vaguely disturbing. As am I. Isn't that interesting? Your quirk isn't wind manipulation, Izuku stated, his clairvoyance activating. You're not who you appear to be. Something like delight flickered across her face. Sharp eyes. I'd expect nothing less. She prepared another attack, but before it could launch, a sudden disruption occurred below. A student with messy purple hair, one of the few remaining candidates from a smaller school, had activated a quirk that created what appeared to be massive energy balls across the battlefield. These orbs detonated with concussive force, eliminating multiple competitors simultaneously. The distraction was momentary, but when Izuku returned his attention to Kami, she had vanished, somehow evading even his enhanced perception. Curious, he murmured, scanning the battlefield below. The chaotic energy attack had accelerated the exam's conclusion, reducing the remaining competitors to near the target number. A final announcement echoed across the arena. Time remaining, 5 minutes. Currently, 45 candidates remain active. 3 more eliminations required. Izuku surveyed the field with calculated precision, identifying the weakest remaining competitors. With ruthless efficiency, he targeted and eliminated 2 students from minor schools who had been hiding rather than engaging. The 43rd competitor, the final elimination needed, was Kaminari from his own class, who had depleted his electrical capacity and was struggling to avoid attacks in his short-circuited state. For a moment, Izuku considered sparing his classmate. It would be a simple matter to eliminate someone else instead. But such sentimentality was beneath the king of heroes. Merit alone determined worth. A golden portal opened above Kaminari, who looked up with comical dread. "Oh, come on, not you too, Midoriya? Consider it a mercy," Izuku replied, a blunted arrow shooting from the portal to strike Kaminari's final target with perfect precision. As Kaminari collapsed in theatrical despair, a final announcement rang out. The examination is complete. The 42 successful candidates have been determined. Please return to the Central Plaza for the awarding of provisional licenses. In the Central Plaza, Mera addressed the successful candidates with what appeared to be his first display of genuine enthusiasm. Congratulations to those who have passed both phases of the exam. You have demonstrated the rescue skills and combat capabilities necessary for provisional hero authorization. He gestured to a table where official-looking cards were arranged. These provisional licenses authorize you to engage in hero activities under specific circumstances as outlined in the accompanying documentation. Use this authority responsibly. As the students collected their licenses, there was a mixture of exhausted relief and triumphant excitement. Most of Class 1A had passed, with only Kaminari and, surprisingly, Bakugo failing to qualify. The explosive boy's elimination had apparently come during the final minutes of the exam when he had been targeted simultaneously by several Shiketsu students. "This is unacceptable," Bakugo raged as they prepared to return to UA. "I refuse to accept failure." "Yet failure has accepted you," Izuku observed calmly, examining his provisional license with mild interest. "Perhaps you should consider why so many chose to target you specifically." "What's that supposed to mean?" Bakugo demanded. "Your combat capabilities are adequate," Izuku replied, "but your persona projects threat without restraint. In a test environment where participants could choose their targets freely, you became a priority elimination, not because you were weakest, but because you were perceived as most dangerous." Bakugo opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, his expression shifting from rage to reluctant consideration. "That's actually not completely stupid. The failure may serve you better than success would have," Izuku continued, turning away. "It provides an opportunity to refine not just your combat technique, but your overall approach to heroics." As they boarded the bus back to UA, Izuku found himself seated beside Momo, who was studying her license with quiet satisfaction. "You performed well," he acknowledged. "Your tactical application of created items was efficient and well-considered." "High praise from the King of Heroes," she replied with a small smile. "Though I noticed something interesting during the combat phase." "Oh, you eliminated 23 competitors directly," she noted, "but indirectly influenced at least 15 more eliminations through strategic positioning and battlefield control. It was impressive." "A king doesn't merely defeat enemies," Izuku stated, though without his usual condescension. "He shapes the battlefield to his advantage." "And what of that Shiketsu student you engaged with?" Momo asked, her tone carefully neutral. "The one who manipulated wind." Something about that encounter seemed unusual. Izuku's crimson eyes narrowed slightly. "Your observation skills continued to develop admirably, Yayorozu." "You're correct, there was something aberrant about that encounter." "In what way?" "Her quirk signature didn't match her abilities," he replied quietly, "and her manner contained knowledge she shouldn't possess." "You think she was an imposter?" Momo asked, her expression growing concerned. "I think," Izuku said with unusual seriousness, "that the League of Villains has more resources than we previously estimated. and that they're watching potential threats with particular interest. The implications settled between them like a physical weight, that the relative peace following the Kamino incident was merely temporary, that greater challenges lay ahead, and that the line between the hero world and villain world was becoming increasingly blurred. In the weeks following the provisional license exam, UA settled into a new routine. The dormitory system created a more cohesive environment for the hero students, while enhanced security measures provided at least the illusion of greater safety. For those who had failed the exam, Bakugo and Kaminari from Class 1A, along with a scattering of students from other classes, a remedial course was arranged. They would have the opportunity to earn their provisional licenses through an alternative program focused on public relations and crisis management. Izuku, naturally, had no interest in such remedial matters. With his license secured, he focused on refining his combat techniques and expanding his knowledge of current villain activities. The encounter with the false Kami during the exam had confirmed his suspicion that the League remained active despite their apparent dispersal after Kamino. On a crisp autumn morning, Aizawa called Class 1A together for a special announcement. Now that most of you have obtained your provisional licenses, it's time to take the next step in your hero education. You'll be participating in work studies with professional heroes. Isn't that the same as the internships we did before? Zero asked, scratching his head in confusion. No, Aizawa replied bluntly. Internships were primarily observational. Work studies involve actual hero work, patrol, investigation, and potentially combat, depending on the agency you join. He distributed a list of hero agencies currently accepting work study applications. Review these options carefully. The hero you choose to work under will significantly influence your development as a professional. As the class examined the list, excited discussions broke out about potential placements. Todoroki was considering his father's agency. Despite their complicated relationship, Uraraka hoped to work with Ryukyu, the dragon hero. Kirishima was determined to apply to Fat Gum's agency in order to work alongside his idol, Fourth Kind. Izuku scanned the list with mild interest, finding most options predictably inadequate for his unique abilities. What hero currently operating could possibly mentor the King of Heroes? The very concept was absurd. Midoriya, Aizawa called as the class period ended. A word. As the others filed out, Izuku approached his homeroom teacher with regal composure. Yes, sensei, I've received a specific request for your work-study placement, Aizawa stated, his expression unreadable. It's unusual. In what way? Sir Night Eye has requested you specifically, Aizawa replied, watching Izuku's reaction carefully. All Might's former sidekick. This was genuinely surprising. Sir Night Eye was known for his exacting standards and his quirk, foresight, which allowed him to see a person's future. He rarely took on students, and when he did, they were typically those who demonstrated exceptional potential within conventional hero parameters. Why would he request me? Izuku asked, genuinely curious. Our approaches to heroics are fundamentally incompatible. He didn't explain his reasoning, Aizawa replied. Only that he wished to evaluate you personally. Given his connection to All Might, I thought you might find it interesting. Former connection, Izuku corrected. They had a falling out years ago, according to my intelligence. Aizawa raised an eyebrow at this, but didn't question how Izuku had obtained such information. Will you accept the placement? Izuku considered the question with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. Sir Naitai agency was currently investigating something significant. His clairvoyance had revealed patterns of activity that suggested a major operation. And the connection to All Might, however strained, might provide insights into the symbol of peace's condition after Kamino. I will, he finally decided. Though I make no promises about compatibility. I'll inform his agency, Aizawa nodded. You'll begin next week. And Midoriya, he paused, his expression growing serious. Night Eye is not someone to underestimate. His quirk gives him insights that even your abilities might not anticipate. We shall see, Izuku replied with imperial confidence. Though I doubt a mere glimpse of the future can compare to my treasury of infinite possibilities. The following week, Izuku arrived at Sir Naitai's agency, a modern, minimalist building in a business district of Tokyo. The interior continued the understated theme, with clean lines and functional design rather than the heroic decorations typical of many agencies. He was greeted by a young hero in a distinctive costume featuring centipede-like appendages. Midoriya Izuku? I'm Centipeder, Sir Naitai's sidekick. He's expecting you. As Centipeder led him through the office, Izuku noted the efficiency of the operation. Heroes and support staff moved with purpose, information flowed through well-established channels, and the atmosphere was one of focused professionalism rather than performative heroics. Sir Nightai's office was located at the end of a long corridor. Centipeder knocked once, then opened the door. "Sir, Midoriya Izuku has arrived." The office beyond was unexpectedly whimsical given the agency's otherwise serious atmosphere. Display cases lined the walls, filled with limited edition All Might merchandise and memorabilia. A large desk dominated the center of the room, behind which sat a tall, thin man with neatly combed green hair and distinctive yellow glasses. "Thank you, Centipeder," Sir Nightai said, his voice precise and measured. "Please close the door." As Centipeder departed, Nightai studied Izuku with analytical intensity. "The King of Heroes," he stated, the title carrying no inflection that revealed his opinion of it. "Your reputation precedes you, as does yours," Izuku replied, meeting the scrutiny with imperial composure. "The question remains why you would request me specifically for this placement." Nightai's expression remained impassive. "Direct. Good. I have no patience for obfuscation." He adjusted his glasses with a precise movement. "I requested you because you represent an anomaly in my calculations." "Elaborate." "My quirk allows me to see a person's future when I touch them," Nightai explained. "It has proven remarkably accurate over my career. However, recent events, particularly those surrounding All Might and All for One, have created discrepancies in my predictions. And you believe I'm connected to these discrepancies?" Izuku deduced. "I believe your presence at the Kamino Ward incident altered outcomes that should have been fixed points," Nightai confirmed. "This interests me." He stood, circling his desk to stand before Izuku. "Before we proceed, I require a demonstration of your capabilities. Not the flashy displays you've shown at UA, but something more substantive." Without warning, Nightai moved with startling speed, his hand extending toward Izuku's face. The activation method for his Foresight quirk. Izuku's reaction was instantaneous. A golden portal opened between them, and from within emerged a simple quarterstaff that intercepted Nightai's hand with perfect timing. "Impressive reflexes," Nightai commented, adjusting his glasses again. "But that was merely a test of reaction time. Now, let's test your strategic thinking." What followed was a series of increasingly complex scenarios, presented as hypothetical situations but clearly designed to evaluate Izuku's approach to heroics. How would he respond to a hostage situation with multiple perpetrators? What strategy would he employ for an evacuation during a natural disaster? How would he prioritize rescue operations when resources were limited? Throughout, Izuku provided answers that were technically perfect but often at odds with conventional hero protocols. He prioritized efficiency over emotion, strategic advantage over public perception, and long-term outcomes over immediate relief. "Your approach is clinical," Nightai observed after the final scenario. "You view heroics as a chess match rather than a humanitarian endeavor." "I view it as both," Izuku corrected. "A king must protect his subjects, but sentiment without strategy leads to greater suffering in the long term." Nightai studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You remind me of him in some ways." "All Might?" Izuku asked, genuinely surprised by the comparison. "No," Nightai replied. "All for One." The statement hung in the air between them, a challenge and an observation simultaneously. "An interesting comparison," Izuku finally said, his voice cold, though fundamentally flawed. "All for One takes what was never his. I merely reclaim what has always belonged to me. And that distinction matters to you," Nightai noted. "The question is whether it matters to those affected by your actions." Before Izuku could respond, Nightai returned to his desk, retrieving a file. "We'll continue this philosophical discussion another time. For now, you should know why I actually requested you for this work study." He opened the file, revealing photographs, reports, and maps related to what appeared to be a Yakuza operation. "Are you familiar with the Shie Hassaikai?" "A Yakuza organization," Izuku replied, his clairvoyance providing immediate information. "Once prominent, now reduced to a shadow of their former influence. Currently led by Kai Chisaki, who calls himself Overhaul." "Correct," Nightai confirmed, seemingly unsurprised by Izuku's knowledge. "We've been investigating them for months. Recently, their activities have escalated in concerning ways." He spread several photographs across the desk, They showed various Yakuza members meeting with known villain associates, transporting suspicious containers, and conducting what appeared to be quirk enhancement drug deals. We believe Chisaki has developed something that could fundamentally destabilize hero society, Night Eye continued. A drug that can permanently erase quirks. This caught Izuku's genuine interest. Permanent quirk erasure? That would shift the balance of power significantly. Precisely, Night Eye agreed. And based on our intelligence, the drug was developed through ethically reprehensible means. He placed one final photograph on the desk, a surveillance image showing Chisaki walking with a small, white-haired child. The girl's arms were heavily bandaged, and her expression reflected profound trauma. "This is Eri," Night Eye explained, his voice taking on a rare emotional edge. "We believe she is central to the development of the quirk-erasing drug. Our intelligence suggests her quirk allows Chisaki to create both the erasure drug and its apparent counterpart, a drug that can enhance or accelerate quirks." Izuku studied the photograph, his crimson eyes narrowing. "You believe he's using the child as a raw material source?" "Yes," Night Eye confirmed grimly. "Based on the bandages and the timing of drug production, we suspect he's harvesting her blood or tissue regularly." For a moment, Izuku was silent, his expression unreadable. Then, with imperial certainty, he stated, "This is unacceptable." "That," Night Eye said with the first hint of approval he'd shown, "is why you're here. Your unique abilities may be crucial for the operation we're planning." Over the next hour, Night Eye outlined the investigation's current status and the planned raid on the Shie Hassaikai compound. The operation would involve multiple hero agencies working in coordination, including Fat Gum's team, where Kirishima would be working, and Ryukyu's group, which would include Uraraka and Tsuyu. "Your role," Night Eye explained, "will be specialized extraction. Once we've secured access to Eri, you'll be responsible for getting her safely out of the compound while the rest of us deal with Chisaki and his men." "And if I encounter Chisaki directly?" Izuku asked, his tone making it clear he considered this outcome likely. "You engage only if necessary to protect Eri," Night Eye specified. "Our primary objective is the child's safety, not Chisaki's capture, though that remains a secondary goal." As the briefing concluded, Night Eye fixed Izuku with an intense stare. "One final point, Midoriya. This operation must succeed on the first attempt. If we fail, Chisaki will relocate Eri to a location we may never discover, and her suffering will continue indefinitely." "I do not fail," Izuku stated with absolute conviction. "When I set my will upon an objective, its achievement is merely a formality." For the first time, Night Eye smiled slightly, a thin, measured expression. "We shall see if reality conforms to your expectations, King of Heroes." In the days that followed, Izuku integrated himself into Sir Night Eye's agency with surprising adaptability. While he maintained his regal demeanor and occasionally imperious pronouncements, he participated in the investigation with genuine focus, his clairvoyance providing insights that even Night Eye's meticulous analysis had missed. During patrol duty with Bubble Girl, another of Night Eye's sidekicks, Izuku demonstrated an unexpected aptitude for public interaction. Not through conventional friendliness, but through a commanding presence that civilians found simultaneously intimidating and reassuring. "You're actually pretty good with people," Bubble Girl observed after they had resolved a minor dispute between street vendors. "In your own unique way, a king must be able to address his subjects effectively," Izuku replied. "Fear and adoration are merely different paths to the same outcome, compliance." "That's not exactly the hero approach they teach at UA," she noted with a slight frown. "Conventional approaches produce conventional results," Izuku stated. "The current hero system is inadequate for the challenges that lie ahead. New methods are required." "What kind of methods?" she asked, genuinely curious despite her evident discomfort with his philosophy. Izuku gestured toward the city skyline. "Look at this society. It has grown dependent on symbols rather than systems, on individual heroes rather than collective strength. When all might falters, as he inevitably will, the structure collapses." "And you have a better alternative?" "A kingdom does not rely on a single warrior," Izuku explained, his voice taking on an almost prophetic quality. "It establishes hierarchies of power, clear chains of command, and systems that persist beyond any individual. The king remains at the apex, but the structure itself endures." Bubble Girl studied him with newfound wariness. "That sounds less like heroics and more like authoritarianism." "A common misinterpretation," Izuku dismissed. "True authority is not oppression but protection. A king who fails to protect his subjects is no king at all." merely a tyrant awaiting inevitable overthrow. Before she could respond, their communication devices activated simultaneously. Nightai's voice came through, urgent but controlled. All operatives returned to base immediately. We've received new intelligence on the Shie Hassaikai. The raid has been accelerated to tomorrow morning. At the agency, heroes from multiple teams gathered for final briefing. Izuku noted familiar faces among them. Kirishima alongside Fat Gum, Uraraka and Tsuyu with Ryukyu. The mood was tense but focused, each hero aware of the operation's significance and the stakes involved. Sir Night-Eye stood before a detailed projection of the Shie Hassaikai compound. Our timeline has been compressed due to intelligence suggesting Chisaki plans to move his operation within the next 48 hours. We strike at 0800 tomorrow. He outlined the final operation plan with military precision. 3 teams would enter simultaneously, Night-Eye's through the main entrance, Fat Gum's through the eastern approach, and Ryukyu's team would create a diversion at the perimeter to draw attention away from the primary ingress points. The compound is a labyrinth, Night-Eye continued, highlighting the complex internal structure. And we have reason to believe Chisaki has a quirk user who can reconfigure the layout at will. Standard navigation will be compromised. He turned to Izuku. This is where your abilities become crucial, Midoriya. Your clairvoyance may be our only reliable means of locating Eri within the changing structure. Izuku nodded once, accepting the responsibility without comment. His treasury contained artifacts that could pierce physical barriers and reveal what lay beyond, tools that would prove invaluable in a shifting environment. As the briefing concluded and the heroes dispersed to prepare, Kirishima approached Izuku with his characteristic enthusiastic grin. Never thought I'd see you working with Sir Night-Eye. Guess we'll be fighting together tomorrow, huh? It appears so, Izuku acknowledged. Your hardening quirk should provide adequate defense against most of Chisaki's forces, though I would advise caution if you encounter the man himself. His Overhaul quirk can disassemble and reassemble matter at the molecular level, including human tissue. Kirishima's expression sobered. Yeah, Fat Gum briefed us on that. Pretty nasty stuff. But we're rescuing that little girl no matter what. His simple determination was both naive and admirable, a combination Izuku had come to recognize as characteristic of many heroes in training. They possessed genuine courage but often lacked strategic understanding of the threats they faced. Just ensure your resolve translates to effective action, Izuku advised. Sentiment without capability is merely a liability in combat situations. Despite the harsh assessment, Kirishima grinned again. Always the charmer, Midoriya. But I get it, we need to be at our best tomorrow. This isn't training anymore. As the heroes departed to rest before the operation, Night-Eye requested a final private word with Izuku in his office. There's something you should know before tomorrow, Night-Eye began once they were alone. I've used my foresight on this operation. And Izuku prompted when Night-Eye hesitated. And I saw complications, Night-Eye admitted, removing his glasses to polish them. A nervous gesture at odds with his usual precision. My quirk showed multiple potential outcomes, which is unusual. Typically, I see a single, fixed future. You believe my presence is creating these variations, Izuku deduced. Yes, Night-Eye confirmed. Your abilities seem to generate what I can only describe as potential timeline branches. Possibilities that shouldn't exist according to my experience with foresight. He replaced his glasses, his expression grave. In some of these branches, the operation succeeds completely. In others, we suffer casualties. In a few, we fail entirely. Which outcome do you consider most probable? Izuku asked, genuinely curious about Night-Eye's assessment. That's just it, Night-Eye replied with uncharacteristic uncertainty. I can't determine probability. The branches appear equally viable until certain key decision points, most of which seem to involve you directly. He fixed Izuku with an intense stare. Tomorrow, Midoriya, your choices may literally determine the fate of that child and everyone involved in this operation. I need to know that you understand the weight of that responsibility. Izuku met his gaze without hesitation. I have carried the weight of civilization since before your quirk evolution existed, Night-Eye. One operation, however significant, is but a moment in the eternal reign of the King of Heroes. Rather than taking offense at the grandiose statement, Night-Eye studied him with analytical interest. You truly believe that, don't you? That you're somehow beyond human. I don't merely believe it, Izuku replied with absolute certainty. It is simply what I am. Tomorrow will merely provide another demonstration of this reality. As dawn broke over the city the following morning, heroes assembled at a staging area near the Shie Hassaikai compound. The mood was focused and tense, each participant aware that the coming hours would test their abilities and resolve in ways standard hero work rarely did. Izuku arrived wearing his full golden armor, the morning light reflecting off its immaculate surface. Several heroes from other agencies stared openly, having heard of the King of Heroes but never witnessed his royal persona directly. Bit flashy for a stealth operation, isn't it? Fat Gum commented, his massive frame dwarfing most of the other heroes present. Stealth is for those who fear discovery, Izuku replied calmly. I have no such concerns. Before Fat Gum could respond, Sir Night-Eye called the group to order. Final check of communications and equipment. We move in 5 minutes. The heroes divided into their assigned teams, confirming radio frequencies and reviewing entry points one last time. Izuku would accompany Night-Eye's team through the main entrance, his abilities best utilized in direct pursuit of their primary objective, locating and extracting Eri. Remember, Night-Eye addressed the assembled heroes. The Shie Hassaikai are not conventional villains. They are organized, disciplined, and ruthless. Do not underestimate any opponent, regardless of appearance. With a final nod, he gave the signal to begin. Ryukyu's team moved first, the dragon hero transforming into her massive reptilian form to create a conspicuous distraction at the compound's outer perimeter. As Yakuza guards rushed to respond to this obvious threat, Night-Eye and Fat Gum led their teams toward their respective entry points. The operation began smoothly, almost too smoothly. The main entrance was lightly defended, with only token resistance from lower-ranking Yakuza members. Night-Eye neutralized them efficiently with his remarkable combat skills, while Izuku merely observed, conserving his resources for more significant threats. This is wrong, Night-Eye muttered as they penetrated deeper into the compound. There should be more security at this level. They've withdrawn to defensive positions around the girl, Izuku stated with certainty, his clairvoyance active. Chisaki is aware of our approach. How could he know? Lemillion, a third-year UA student working with Night-Eye, asked. We maintained complete operational security. Because we're not the first to arrive, Izuku replied, pointing toward a nearby wall where subtle scorch marks indicated recent combat. Someone else infiltrated before us. Recently, Night-Eye examined the evidence with a grim expression. The League of Villains. They must be after the Quirk-erasing drug. 2 enemies, 1 target, Lemillion summarized. This just got more complicated. No, Izuku contradicted him. It merely adds additional obstacles to be overcome. The objective remains unchanged. They advanced cautiously through the winding corridors of the compound, Izuku periodically opening small portals to deploy artifacts that could detect life forms and quirk signatures through walls. The complex was indeed labyrinthine, with multiple levels extending deep underground. The structure is shifting, Izuku observed as they descended a staircase that seemed to extend farther than the building's exterior had suggested possible. A quirk user is reconfiguring the internal architecture as we advance. Can you counter it? Night-Eye asked. In response, Izuku opened a portal and withdrew what appeared to be a golden compass with unusual markings. This is the Wayfinder of Deadless. It reveals true paths regardless of illusion or transformation. The artifact glowed softly, then projected a ghostly map in the air before them, showing not just their current location, but the actual layout of the compound regardless of the ongoing modifications. Efficient, Night-Eye acknowledged. Which way to Eri? Izuku studied the projection, his crimson eyes narrowing as he processed the information. 3 levels down, eastern quadrant. She's being moved by Chisaki himself. As they followed the path indicated by the Wayfinder, they encountered increasingly capable resistance. Yakuza members with combat-oriented quirks emerged from side passages, while traps activated in corridors that had seemed clear moments before. Lemillion phased through obstacles with his permeation quirk, creating openings for Night-Eye to exploit with his precise combat style. Izuku, true to his royal persona, engaged only when necessary, deploying weapons from his treasury with surgical precision to neutralize threats that might delay their advance. Conserving your strength? Lemillion asked during a brief respite, his tone curious rather than accusatory. Allocating resources appropriately, Izuku corrected. A king does not exhaust himself on pawns when bishops and knights remain on the board. Their progress was interrupted by a thunderous explosion from somewhere deeper in the compound. The floor beneath them trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. That wasn't planned, Night-Eye stated, activating his communication device. Fat Gum, report status. The response came through with static interference. Engaged with high-level opponents. Red Riot is holding but injured. We've encountered some kind of trigger-enhanced quirk user. And Ryukyu's team? Still exterior. Maintaining the perimeter but facing increased resistance. Night Eye processed this information quickly. We continue as planned. Midoriya, any change in Ares' location? Izuku consulted the Wayfinder again. She's stationary now. Chisaki appears to be engaged with someone else. His eyes narrowed. Interesting. One of the League members has reached him before us. Who? Night Eye demanded. Toga Himiko, Izuku identified. The blood manipulator. Though she's not alone, I sense another presence with unusual quirk characteristics. This complicates matters, Night Eye admitted. We need to reach Eri before either Chisaki relocates her or the League obtains access to her. They increased their pace, moving through the compound with greater urgency. As they descended to the level where Eri was being held, the evidence of recent combat became more pronounced. Walls disintegrated and reformed, blood spatter on floors, the distinctive scent of Toga's quirk-modified blood in the air. Finally, they reached a massive reinforced door, the entrance to what appeared to be Chisaki's inner sanctum. Beyond it, Izuku's artifacts detected multiple presences: Chisaki, Eri, Toga, and at least one other League member, along with several Hassaikai lieutenants. Direct approach or strategic entry? Night Eye asked, deferring to Izuku's superior intelligence-gathering capabilities. Both, Izuku replied. Lemillion can phase through the wall to create a distraction while we breach the main entrance. The dual approach will divide their attention. Night Eye nodded in agreement. Lemillion, circle around to the eastern wall and wait for my signal. Midoriya and I will give you 30 seconds to get into position. As Lemillion departed, Izuku prepared for the assault. Golden portals opened around him, each containing a different weapon or artifact selected specifically for the coming confrontation. Ready? Night Eye asked after the designated interval. A king is always ready, Izuku replied, his crimson eyes gleaming with anticipation. Night Eye activated his communication device. Lemillion, execute. What followed was a precisely coordinated attack. As Lemillion phased through the eastern wall of the chamber, Izuku unleashed a barrage of golden weapons against the reinforced door, shattering it instantly. Simultaneously, Night Eye launched himself into the room, his movements a blur of calculated efficiency as he engaged the nearest Yakuza guards. The scene within was chaos. Chisaki stood at the center of the room, one hand gripping Eri's arm tightly while the other was extended toward Toga, who danced away from his deadly touch with unsettling agility. Another League member, Twice, with his duplication quirk, was creating copies of himself to overwhelm Chisaki's remaining guards. Intruders, Chisaki snarled, his plague Dr. Mask giving his voice an eerie resonance. Keep them away from the girl. His remaining lieutenants immediately redirected their attention toward the new threats, but they were unprepared for the level of coordination between Night Eye, Lemillion, and Izuku. Within moments, half the Yakuza forces were neutralized, while Toga and Twice used the distraction to press their own attack against Chisaki. My, Toga exclaimed, her unsettling grin widening as she noticed Izuku. The Golden King himself. Shigaraki will be so interested to hear about your involvement. Your master remains in hiding while sending children to do his work, Izuku observed coldly. Typical mongrel behavior. Before Toga could respond, Chisaki slammed his free hand against the floor. The chamber's entire structure began to transform, walls liquefying and reforming, the floor rising and falling in waves of molecular reconstruction. This is MY domain. Chisaki roared, his usual composure cracking under the pressure of multiple high-level opponents. None of you will leave alive. Eri, still clutched in his grip, cried out in pain as his fingers tightened around her bandaged arm. The sound, small and wounded, cut through the chaos of battle with unexpected clarity. Izuku's reaction was instantaneous and uncharacteristic. A golden portal opened directly beneath Eri and Chisaki, creating a precise hole in the floor that caused them to fall. Simultaneously, another portal opened beside Izuku, through which he reached with inhuman speed to grasp Eri's other arm as she fell. For a crucial moment, she was suspended between them, Chisaki pulling her down through the hole, Izuku holding her from above. Their eyes met, the terrified red eyes of a traumatized child and the burning crimson gaze of the King of Heroes. Let go of what is mine, Izuku stated, his voice carrying an authority that transcended human command. In that moment of connection, something unprecedented occurred. Eri's quirk, dormant but responding to her extreme emotional state. Activated. A soft glow emanated from her horn, spreading to encompass first her own body, then Izuku's arm where he held her. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced, a reversal, a rewinding of existence itself. For a heartbeat, Izuku felt something he had not felt in countless centuries: vulnerability. The moment passed as quickly as it had come. With renewed determination, Izuku opened another portal directly beneath Chisaki. From within emerged Enkidu, the chains that could bind gods, wrapping around the Yakuza leader's arm and forcing him to release his grip on Eri. With a swift pull, Izuku drew Eri through the portal beside him, cradling her small form against his golden armor with unexpected gentleness. "Secure," he announced to Night-Eye, who had been engaging twice to prevent the villain from interfering with the extraction. "Extraction complete." Night-Eye called into his communication device. "All teams begin withdrawal sequence," but Chisaki was not so easily defeated. Emerging from the hole with terrible fury, his body began to transform, merging with one of his lieutenants in a grotesque display of his Overhaul quirk's true potential. Limbs multiplied, flesh reconfigured, and a monstrous amalgamation rose where the Yakuza leader had stood. "The girl is mine!" the fused creature roared, its multiple eyes fixed on Eri with obsessive intensity. "She belongs to me." "Incorrect," Izuku stated with imperial certainty. "She now falls under my protection. Your claim is void." Still holding Eri securely with one arm, Izuku opened multiple portals around the chamber. From within each emerged a different divine weapon, all aimed at the monstrous fusion of Chisaki and his subordinate. "Lemillion, Night-Eye, withdraw with the League members," Izuku commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This conflict has escalated beyond conventional resolution. We can't leave you alone against that thing," Lemillion protested. "You misunderstand," Izuku replied calmly. "I'm not in danger. I'm simply ensuring you aren't caught in the destruction that follows." Before they could argue further, Izuku opened another portal, this one large enough for a person to pass through. "This leads directly to the surface. Take it now." Night-Eye, recognizing the strategic logic if not approving of the approach, nodded once. "Lemillion, we're withdrawing. The primary objective is secured." As they retreated through the portal, along with Toga and Twice, who were pragmatic enough to recognize when a tactical withdrawal was appropriate, Izuku turned his full attention to the monstrous Chisaki. "You cannot defeat me," the fusion roared, its body continuing to transform and evolve as it absorbed debris from the crumbling chamber. "The girl's power is essential to my plans. To purify this world of the quirk disease." "Your ambitions are irrelevant," Izuku replied, his voice eerily calm as he held Eri protectively against his armor. "You committed the one sin I cannot overlook. You claimed ownership of something that was never yours to possess." He opened one final portal, larger than any he had created during the operation. From within emerged not a weapon but a throne, golden and imposing, radiating authority that transcended human comprehension. Seating himself upon it with Eri still secured in his protection, Izuku's crimson eyes blazed with cold fury. "A king's judgment is absolute and eternal. Yours has been rendered." The weapons surrounding Chisaki activated simultaneously, each striking with divine precision. The monstrous fusion howled as it was pierced, dismembered, and systematically disassembled by artifacts designed to counter regeneration and molecular reconstruction. Despite the overwhelming assault, Chisaki's desperate survival instinct drove him forward, multiple limbs reaching for Eri, even as his composite body disintegrated. "She is the key, the cure. You don't understand what she represents." "I understand perfectly," Izuku replied, his voice carrying an ancient weight. "She represents the same thing all children should, the future. One you sought to corrupt through suffering." With a final gesture, Izuku summoned Ie, the Sword of Rupture, from his treasury. Unlike at Kamino, where he had used only a fraction of its power, this time he fully extended the segmented blade, which began to rotate with gathering energy. "For the crime of cruelty to one under royal protection, I sentence you to erasure," Izuku declared, his voice resonating with authority beyond mortal judgment. Enuma Elish, the activation of Ie's true power was contained but devastating. A concentrated vortex of destructive energy engulfed Chisaki's monstrous form, separating the fused beings at the molecular level while simultaneously destroying the chamber around them. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp within the affected area, space itself rejecting the abomination's existence. When the energy dissipated, Chisaki lay unconscious and separated from his lieutenant, both reduced to their original human forms. The chamber had been transformed into a perfectly cylindrical crater, every surface smooth as if cut by an impossibly precise instrument. Eri, who had hidden her face against Izuku's armor during the confrontation, slowly looked up at her rescuer. Her red eyes, which had known only fear for so long, held something new, cautious wonder. Is he gone? She whispered, her voice small and uncertain. Yes, Izuku confirmed, his typically cold tone softening almost imperceptibly. He will never touch you again. This I decree as absolute law. As he rose from his throne, which dissolved back into his treasury, Izuku adjusted his hold on Eri to ensure her comfort. For perhaps the first time in his manifestation at UA, his expression held something approaching genuine protectiveness rather than mere possessive pride. Come, little one, he said, opening a portal to the surface. Your freedom awaits. The aftermath of the Shie Hassaikai raid unfolded across multiple dimensions of hero society. The operation was declared a success. Eri rescued, Chisaki and his key lieutenants captured. The quirk-erasing drug production halted before it could be widely distributed. Yet there were complications that the public announcements didn't address. The League of Villains had escaped with samples of the drug and possibly its formula. Several heroes, including Fat Gum and Kirishima, had sustained serious injuries during the operation. And most significantly, Sir Night Eye had been critically wounded in a confrontation with a Hassaikai member after separating from Izuku, an injury that would ultimately prove fatal despite the best medical intervention. Izuku, however, had emerged from the operation not merely unscathed, but with an unexpected addition to his sphere of influence. Eri, whose quirk had proven too dangerous and unstable for conventional care, had been placed under UA's protection, specifically under the supervision of Recovery Girl for medical purposes and Aizawa for quirk management. Yet it was to Izuku that the child responded most positively, a development that baffled many who knew the King of Heroes' typically cold demeanor. I don't understand it, Recovery Girl admitted during a staff meeting 2 weeks after the raid. She's terrified of most adults, especially men. Yet she actually asks for Midoriya by name. It's not complicated, Aizawa observed, his perpetually tired eyes showing rare insight. Midoriya was the first person to ever protect her without qualification or hesitation. He didn't treat her as a victim to be pitted or a resource to be used, just as someone under his protection. For a child who's known only exploitation, that certainty is compelling. All Might, who had been unusually quiet since Naitai's funeral, nodded slowly. Young Midoriya's methods may be unconventional, but his protection of Eri was absolute. She senses that security. Still, Principal Nizu interjected. We must ensure her recovery includes proper socialization and emotional development. Midoriya's unique perspective might not provide the balanced environment a traumatized child needs. Perhaps, Aizawa acknowledged. But for now, his presence stabilizes her. We can build on that foundation. The decision was made to allow Eri limited, supervised interaction with Izuku while her medical treatment and quirk training continued. What no one had anticipated was how this arrangement would affect the King of Heroes himself. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Izuku sat in UA's courtyard, watching as Eri cautiously explored the garden under Aizawa's distant but vigilant supervision. Her white hair caught the sunlight, creating an almost ethereal halo around her small form as she discovered the simple joy of flowers left undisturbed by cruelty. She's healing well, Momo observed, approaching to sit beside Izuku on the stone bench. Recovery Girl says her physical injuries are almost completely resolved. The body heals more readily than the mind, Izuku replied, his crimson eyes tracking Eri's movements with unusual attentiveness. Her psychological recovery will require more time. You've been different since the raid, Momo noted carefully. More present, somehow. Your observation is imprecise but not entirely incorrect, Izuku acknowledged. The operation provided insights I hadn't anticipated. About Eri? About responsibility, Izuku clarified. A king's domain is not merely territory but all who dwell within it. Their welfare becomes an extension of royal authority. Momo studied him thoughtfully. That sounds almost like you're developing a hero philosophy. Call it what you will, Izuku replied with imperial dismissal. I merely recognized the proper order of things. Their conversation was interrupted as Eri approached, holding a small flower she had picked. She offered it to Izuku with solemn ceremony, her red eyes watching carefully for his reaction. Without hesitation, Izuku accepted the gift with the same gravity one might receive a state tribute. Thank you, Eri. A worthy offering. The girl's face brightened with a tiny, precious smile before she returned to her exploration of the garden. "You're good with her," Momo observed, genuine surprise in her tone. "Children see the world with clarity adults have forgotten," Izuku replied. "They recognize true power and respond to genuine protection." There is no deception in her interactions, a refreshing quality in this era of masks and pretense. As autumn deepened toward winter, UA prepared for its annual cultural festival, a tradition that had taken on new significance in the wake of recent villain activities. The event would serve as both a morale booster for the students and a public relations opportunity to reassure society that hero education continued despite the challenges. Class 1A had decided to present a musical and dance performance, a choice that initially struck Izuku as frivolous but which he eventually recognized as strategically sound. The public needed to see future heroes as well-rounded individuals, not merely combat specialists. "I will not participate in such undignified activities," he declared when the roles were being assigned. "A king does not dance for the entertainment of subjects." "Actually," Ida replied, adjusting his glasses with characteristic precision. Throughout history, many royal traditions included ceremonial dances performed by monarchs. It was considered a demonstration of divine grace and authority. Indeed, Momo added, the Sun King, Louis XIV of France, was renowned for his dancing abilities. He often led court ballets to reinforce his image as the center of cultural and political life. Izuku's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your historical knowledge is not entirely inaccurate. Besides," Kaminari interjected with a grin, "we already assigned you the perfect role. You'll be center stage during the finale, basically just standing there looking regal while the rest of us peasants dance around you." "That is marginally acceptable," Izuku conceded after brief consideration. "Though I will design my own costume rather than accept whatever common attire you had planned." As preparations for the festival continued, an unexpected request came from Aizawa. "Eri has been responding well to music therapy," he explained to Izuku after class one day. "Recovery girl thinks attending your class performance might be beneficial for her recovery. A positive experience in a controlled environment. The performance is intended for public attendance," Izuku pointed out. "The security implications of Eri's presence would be significant." "We've considered that," Aizawa replied. "She would attend the final rehearsal, not the public performance. Only UA staff and students would be present." Izuku considered this for a moment. "Very well. I will ensure the rehearsal meets appropriate standards for her first cultural experience." This seemingly simple agreement had a profound effect on Class 1A's preparation intensity. Knowing that Eri, a child who had known only cruelty for most of her life, would be their first audience transformed what had been a casual project into a mission of genuine importance. "We have to make this perfect," Uraraka declared during a planning session. "This might be Eri-chan's first chance to just be a normal kid enjoying something fun." Even Bakugo, who had initially dismissed the festival as a waste of time, approached the rehearsals with unexpected seriousness. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," he growled. "I won't have that kid thinking heroes half-ass anything." For Izuku, the preparation took on additional significance. While he maintained his typically aloof demeanor during group rehearsals, he dedicated considerable private time to ensuring his role would be performed with flawless precision. A king's presentation, even in something as trivial as a school festival, must be nothing less than perfect. The day before the final rehearsal, however, a complication arose. UA's security systems detected an unauthorized individual attempting to infiltrate the campus perimeter, a villain with an unusual quirk that allowed him to manipulate elastic materials, including his own body. "We've identified him as Gentle Criminal," Aizawa informed Class 1A during an emergency briefing. "A social media villain who films his crimes for online distribution. Intelligence suggests he's targeting the cultural festival for his next video." "But why?" Uraraka asked, genuine confusion in her expression. "The festival isn't even a hero event. It's just cultural performances. Publicity," Bakugo stated flatly. "Hitting UA after everything that's happened would get him major villain cred for minimal risk." "Precisely," Aizawa confirmed. "Security has been enhanced, but remain vigilant. Report any suspicious activity immediately." As the class dispersed to continue preparations, Izuku remained behind, his expression thoughtful. "This gentle criminal," he addressed Aizawa. "He operates with an assistant, correct? A girl who amplifies his quirk through emotional energy." Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. "That information wasn't in the briefing." "How did you know?" I make it my business to catalog all potential threats regardless of their apparent significance, Izuku replied. This gentle is more dangerous than his ridiculous persona suggests. His quirk, properly applied, has considerable combat potential. All the more reason to ensure he doesn't breach campus, Aizawa stated. The professional heroes will handle security. Of course, Izuku agreed, though something in his tone suggested he had his own assessment of the situation. The following morning, Izuku left Heights Alliance earlier than usual, ostensibly to perform final preparations for the rehearsal. In reality, his clairvoyance had revealed something the security systems had missed. Gentle Criminal had already breached the outer perimeter and was approaching from an unexpected angle. Rather than alerting security, Izuku decided to address the situation personally. A minor villain hardly warranted a full response from UA's professional staff, and the confrontation would provide useful data on non-lethal containment techniques, an area where his typical approach might benefit from refinement. He intercepted Gentle and his assistant, La Brava, in a wooded area near the performance hall. They were recording what appeared to be an introduction to their planned infiltration, completely unaware of his approach until he spoke. Unauthorized entry onto royal grounds is punishable by immediate expulsion, Izuku stated, his voice carrying through the clearing with imperial authority. Though in your case, I'm inclined toward more permanent solutions. Gentle Criminal spun around with theatrical alarm, his well-groomed appearance and elaborate Victorian-inspired costume creating an almost comical contrast to Izuku's golden armor. My, what have we here? Gentle exclaimed, quickly recovering his composure and addressing the camera La Brava held. It seems UA sends students to do the work of professional security. How the mighty have fallen. I am no mere student, Izuku corrected, golden portals beginning to open around him. And you have made a critical error in judgment by targeting this particular event. La Brava, a small woman with pink hair and an intensely loyal expression, stepped protectively in front of Gentle. Don't underestimate Gentle. He's the most elegant villain in the world. Villainy requires more than costumes and catchphrases, Izuku replied dismissively. It requires actual threat capacity, which you distinctly lack. This assessment clearly struck a nerve with Gentle, whose genteel expression hardened into something more genuine. I see UA's most notorious student maintains his reputation for arrogance. Perhaps a demonstration is in order, La Brava. The small woman nodded, her eyes filling with tears of emotional intensity. I love you, Gentle. A visible aura surrounded Gentle as La Brava's quirk activated, temporarily enhancing his abilities through the power of her genuine devotion. With newfound speed and strength, he launched himself at Izuku, his elastic quirk allowing him to bounce through the air in unpredictable patterns. Elastic force, Gentle declared as he manipulated the air itself, creating invisible elastic barriers that he used to propel himself at increasing velocity. Izuku observed the attack with clinical interest, making no move to evade. As Gentle's enhanced punch approached, a golden portal opened between them. From within emerged not a weapon but what appeared to be a simple cloth, though its golden sheen suggested it was anything but ordinary. The moment Gentle's fist contacted the cloth, his elastic force was not merely stopped but reversed, sending him flying backward with his own momentum multiplied. The Shroud of Reversal. Izuku identified the artifact as Gentle crashed through several trees before managing to stabilize himself. It returns any force applied against it with perfect efficiency. Your quirk, which relies on elastic energy, is particularly vulnerable to such countermeasures. Gentle, La Brava cried out in alarm, rushing to his side. Despite the powerful impact, Gentle rose with dignity intact, brushing debris from his costume. Most impressive, young man. I see why they call you the King of Heroes. This encounter is concluded, Izuku stated, opening additional portals around the pair. Surrender now, and I will ensure your incarceration includes appropriate accommodations for your particular sensibilities. Something in Gentle's expression shifted, the theatrical villain persona momentarily replaced by something more authentic. May I ask why this particular event warrants such personal defense from one such as yourself? Surely a cultural festival is beneath your royal concerns. There will be a guest attending today's rehearsal, Izuku replied after brief consideration. A child who has known only cruelty and confinement. This performance represents her first experience of normal human celebration. He fixed Gentle with a stare of imperial certainty. I will not allow anyone, villain, hero, or civilian, to disrupt that experience. Not for internet fame, not for villain credibility, not for any reason whatsoever. This revelation seemed to genuinely affect Gentle, whose expression softened with unexpected understanding. A child, you say? One who has suffered extensively, Izuku confirmed. Her recovery now takes precedence over all lesser concerns, including your misguided attempt at notoriety. Gentle straightened his cravat, a conflicted expression crossing his features. I see. Well, this does place me in a moral quandary. He turned to La Brava, whose camera was still recording. My dear, I believe we must consider a change of venue. Perhaps the convenience store that recently changed its pudding recipe would make a more appropriate target for today's gentlemanly crime. But gentle, La Brava protested. Yue was going to be your masterpiece. There are lines even a gentleman villain does not cross, Gentle replied with surprising sincerity. Disrupting a traumatized child's healing is one such line. He turned back to Izuku with a formal bow. You have my word as a gentleman that we shall withdraw without further incident. The cultural festival shall proceed undisturbed. Izuku studied him carefully, his clairvoyance confirming the genuine nature of Gentle's concession. Your word is accepted, though I will verify your departure personally. Of course, Gentle agreed, offering his arm to La Brava. Come, my dear, let us make a dignified exit. As they turned to leave, Gentle paused for a final remark. I hope the child enjoys the performance. Perhaps someday you might tell me if my decision today made any difference in her recovery. Perhaps, Izuku acknowledged with unexpected gravity. Though I suggest focusing on your imminent capture by actual authorities rather than hypothetical future conversations. Gentle laughed with genuine amusement. Fair enough, King of Heroes. Fair enough. True to his word, Gentle Criminal and La Brava departed UA grounds without further incident, choosing a different target for their performance crime. Izuku verified their exit before returning to the performance hall, arriving just in time for final preparations. Where have you been? Ida demanded, his arms making characteristic chopping motions of distress. The rehearsal begins in 20 minutes, and you weren't present for the final costume check. Addressing a security concern, Izuku replied calmly, summoning his performance attire directly from his treasury, a golden ensemble that made his usual armor seem almost subdued by comparison. It has been resolved. Before Ida could press for details, Aizawa entered with an announcement. Eri will be arriving in 5 minutes. Everyone to your positions for final checks. The atmosphere in the hall immediately shifted from chaotic preparation to focused determination. Class 1 took their positions with unusual precision, each student aware of the importance this performance held beyond mere school tradition. When Eri entered, escorted by Mirio, who had remained involved in her care despite his grief over Naitai's death, the class maintained their composure, though many smiled warmly at the small, white-haired girl who regarded the decorated hall with wide-eyed wonder. Welcome, Eri-chan, Uraraka called cheerfully. We're so happy you could come see our rehearsal. Eri nodded shyly, staying close to Mirio as they were shown to seats in the center of the otherwise empty audience area. Her red eyes scanned the stage until they found Izuku, positioned regally at center stage for the opening tableau. When their gazes met, she offered a tiny wave, which he acknowledged with a slight but deliberate nod. Let's begin, Aizawa instructed from the side of the hall. Full performance. No stops unless absolutely necessary. What followed was perhaps the most precisely executed performance in UA Cultural Festival history. Each student performed their role with flawless dedication. The dance sequences, musical numbers, and dramatic interludes flowing together with professional smoothness. Throughout, Eri watched with increasing wonder, her initial trepidation gradually replaced by genuine enjoyment. When Jiro's musical solo transitioned into a high-energy dance number led by Ashido and Hagakure, the child's expression transformed, her eyes widening and her mouth forming a small O of delight. For the finale, Izuku took his position on the elevated center platform, his golden attire catching the stage lights to create an almost divine illumination. As the rest of the class performed an elaborate choreographed sequence around him, he maintained perfect regal posture, a living embodiment of the sun around which planets orbited. At the climactic moment, when the music reached its peak and the dance formation achieved its most complex pattern, Izuku deviated from the rehearsed routine. Opening a small portal beside him, he withdrew what appeared to be golden dust, which he released with a precise gesture. The particles caught the stage lighting and transformed, creating a miniature galaxy of golden stars that swirled above the performers before coalescing into a crown formation directly over Eri's seat in the audience. The spontaneous addition drew gasps of appreciation from the performers, but it was Eri's reaction that truly mattered. For the first time since her rescue, the child laughed. a small, genuine sound of pure joy that seemed to illuminate the hall more brightly than any stage effect could achieve. As the performance concluded and the lights came up, the class gathered at the edge of the stage, bowing to their audience of one. Eri stood on her chair, applauding with enthusiastic abandon, her face transformed by happiness. "That was amazing," she exclaimed, her voice carrying a lightness none of them had heard before. "Especially the stars at the end." Mirio lifted her onto his shoulders with a grin. "Should we tell them what you thought, Eri-chan?" She nodded eagerly, then announced with solemn certainty, "It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The simple declaration affected the performers more profoundly than any professional review could have. Several students, Uraraka and Ishido most visibly, wiped away tears, while even Bakugo seemed momentarily less scowling than usual. As the class dispersed to prepare for the actual festival the following day, Izuku found himself approached by Eri, who had asked Mirio to bring her closer to the stage. "The stars were for me, weren't they?" she asked, her red eyes meeting his crimson gaze with unusual directness. "Yes," Izuku confirmed without hesitation. "They were called the Dust of Celestial Wonder, an artifact from my treasury usually reserved for ceremonial occasions of significant importance." "Like today?" she asked. "Precisely like today," he agreed with imperial certainty. "A king recognizes moments of true significance and acknowledges them appropriately." Eri considered this with the serious contemplation children sometimes bring to important concepts. "I'm glad you're a king," she finally declared. "Kings can protect people, can't they?" "That is their primary function," Izuku confirmed, though few in this era remember this truth. As Mirio led Eri away for her scheduled treatment with Recovery Girl, Izuku remained on the stage, watching their departure with an expression that, had anyone been observing closely, might have been mistaken for something dangerously close to warmth. Momo, who had indeed been watching, approached quietly. "That was a deviation from the choreography," she noted, though her tone held no criticism. "The circumstances warranted adaptation," Izuku replied simply. "Her laugh," Momo said softly. "That was the first time any of us have heard it." "Yes," Izuku acknowledged, "a significant development in her recovery timeline. And worthy of celestial dust," Momo added with a small smile. Izuku met her gaze with unexpected directness. "Some moments transcend ordinary acknowledgement, Yaoyorozu, even for kings." As they stood together in the emptying hall, a subtle shift seemed to solidify between them, a deepening of understanding that required no further articulation. The King of Heroes remained fundamentally unchanged in his imperial nature, yet something had evolved in his perception of his domain and those within it. The cultural festival proceeded the following day without incident. Class 1A's performance drawing enthusiastic response from the public audience. Yet for those who had witnessed the rehearsal, the official event seemed somehow less significant than the private performance for an audience of one. As autumn gave way to winter, and UA prepared for the next phase of hero education, rumors began to circulate about upcoming changes to the work-study program. Students whispered about a new initiative that would pair them with top 10 heroes for intensive training, a response to the growing villain threat and the gradual withdrawal of all might from public hero work. "I heard Endeavor is taking students directly," Kaminari commented during dinner one evening in the Heights Alliance common area. "Now that he's officially the #1 hero." "My father has always been selective about who he works with," Todoroki replied neutrally. "I wouldn't expect many openings." "What about you, Midoriya?" Kirishima asked. "With Sir Night Eye?" He hesitated, the loss still fresh for many of them. "I mean, will you be looking for a new agency placement?" Izuku, who had been reviewing ancient texts at a table apart from the others, looked up with mild interest. "My arrangements are already confirmed." "With who?" several students asked simultaneously. "That information remains privileged," Izuku replied, returning to his reading. "Though I suspect many of you will find the upcoming announcements illuminating." This cryptic response fueled further speculation, but Izuku offered no additional details. His attention had already shifted beyond mere work-study placements to the broader patterns his clairvoyance had begun to reveal. Movements within villain society that suggested a fundamental transformation was underway. The League of Villains, once a disorganized collection of ideological extremists, was evolving into something more structured and purposeful. The Meta-Liberation Army, long thought to be a fringe political movement, was showing signs of resurgence. And beneath it all, like a shadow cast by a light not yet visible, lurked the influence of All for One, diminished after Kamino but far from defeated. As Izuku stood on the dormitory roof that night, Gazing at stars partially obscured by winter clouds, he contemplated the shifting landscape of power before him. Hero society, built around the singular pillar of all might, was fracturing in his absence. What would emerge from those fractures remained uncertain. A king does not merely react to change, he murmured to the night sky. He shapes it according to his vision. Behind him, the door to the roof access opened quietly as Momo emerged, now familiar enough with his habits to know where to find him on such evenings. Contemplating the future? She asked, joining him at the railing. Preparing for it, Izuku corrected. The coming months will test this society's foundations in ways few anticipate. You've sensed something specific? She inquired, having learned to trust his insights even when she didn't fully understand their source. Not specific, he replied thoughtfully. More structural. The balance of power is shifting, not just between heroes and villains, but within each group. New hierarchies are forming, old alliances dissolving. And where do we stand in this shifting landscape? Momo asked, the we encompassing not just the two of them but their entire class, the future heroes who would inherit whatever remained after the coming storms. Izuku turned to her, his crimson eyes reflecting the distant city lights. At the threshold of a new era, the age of symbols is ending, Yaoyorozu. What follows will be determined by those with the vision to see beyond conventional limitations and the power to implement that vision. And you have both, she observed. Not a question but a recognition. Yes, he acknowledged without false modesty. As do you in your own way. The simple acknowledgement, perhaps the most direct compliment he had ever offered her, hung in the cold air between them, significant in its rarity and its timing. The world remembers kings, Izuku continued after a moment, his gaze returning to the horizon where tomorrow waited. Not those who scurry in the dark. What approaches is an opportunity for definition, for heroes, for villains, for society itself. And for you? Momo asked quietly. Izuku's expression remained impassive, but something in his crimson eyes intensified, a certainty beyond human doubt, a purpose that transcended conventional ambition. For me, he replied with imperial confidence. It is merely the next chapter in an eternal reign. The stage changes, the players evolve, but the king remains constant. As it was in the beginning, so shall it be in what comes next. As they stood together beneath the winter sky, the future unfurled before them like an unwritten scroll, filled with potential for both golden triumph and devastating loss. What that future held, even Izuku's clairvoyance could not fully reveal. But of one thing, the King of Heroes remained absolutely certain. His domain would endure, his treasury would provide, and his reign would continue, through whatever challenges the coming days might bring. The Age of Heroes was transforming, but the Age of Kings was eternal. And that's how legends are written. From the battlefield of heroes to the heart of UA, Deku's golden rise isn't slowing down anytime soon. If you enjoyed this, drop a like. 100 likes unlocks the next royal decree. Comment your favorite moment or who you think deserves the king's wrath next. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and join the ChronoCrew Legends because the next chapter is already in motion. Until then, stay legendary and ride the timeline.